Today I decided to make Chef Sanjyot Keer's vegetarian pulao recipe. When I saw this recipe, it looked really delicious, and so I'm like, let me try and make this. So I decided to make it. The one thing I will definitely say before starting this recipe is watch the whole video and then make sure that you have all the ingredients before you start. There's a step in the middle that you'll see where I needed the biryani masala, and I had to stop the process and make the masala before continuing. So just know that. Just like any other recipe, just read the whole thing and watch the whole thing through before you start making the recipe. So again, I'm going to try and recreate Chef's Enjoy the Keer's vegetarian pulao recipe. Let's see how it turns out. And at the end, I will let you know if it was worth it or not. Recipe calls for 2 cups of basmati rice, and that's what this is. I'm going to rinse it until the water is clear, and then soak it for about half an hour. And it was very specific when rinsing, to do it gently, so not to break the grains apart. So I'm gonna rinse it until the water runs clear, and then soak it for about half hour. So just to show what it means by clear water and not clear water, this is not clear water. This is just the first rinse. So usually rices are coated with like starch or something. And so you need to get that out, especially for the biryani, because you want each rice grain to be separate. You don't want the rice to stick together. So I'm going to give it a few more washes. This is the third rinse, and as you can see, the water is much clearer. I'm going to throw this water out and then put fresh water in for the rice to soak in for about 30 minutes. Meanwhile, I'll get the spices ready. The vegetables I need for making this pulao is green beans, carrots, potatoes, and in the recipe it had fresh peas. I didn't have any fresh peas, so I'm just using frozen peas, but these are really good quality frozen peas, so I think that's all right. And then to saute, it asks for 1 tomato and 2 onions and to be sliced. So this is sliced tomato and then 2 onions thinly sliced. The spices I need for this pulao is half a teaspoon of cumin seeds, 3 green cardamom, 1 black cardamom, 1 inch cinnamon stick, 4 or 5 cloves, 4 or 5 black peppercorns, and 2 bay leaves. So those are the dry spices I need. So I have all my vegetables and everything all set up, and now I'm ready to cook the pulao. Right, I have a heavy bottom, a pretty deep pan, and in it I have 1 tablespoon of canola oil and 2 tablespoons of ghee, which is clarified butter, just as the recipe indicates. The reason I'm using a deep bottom pan is because I'm going to cook the vegetables and the rice all in this pot, versus like normally when I make rice I would use a rice cooker, but in the recipe video he uses a deep pot, so that's what I'm using. I'm waiting for the oil to get hot, and then I'll add all my dry spices along with the onions to saute. Okay, my oil is sufficiently hot, and I tested it by adding a couple cumin seeds to see if they're sizzling. They are, so I'm going to add the rest of the dry spices and then my sliced onions. I've added the sliced onions, And I'm going to turn the heat down and cook the onions until they're light golden brown. Okay, the onions are coming along nicely. Still a few more minutes. Meanwhile, I forgot that I had to make a ginger garlic paste, so I need to go do that now. Okay, so I needed ginger, garlic, and green chili paste. I don't have a small mixture. My blender is huge, and just for this, I didn't want to blend the whole thing. So I just minced the garlic and ginger by hand, and then cut the chilies into very thin slices, and that's gonna have to do. I didn't realize this recipe has a lot of steps and tons of ingredient. I mean, it's easy to make once you follow everything, but it does have a lot of steps and a lot of little ingredients. So make sure you read the recipe thoroughly before trying it, because I forgot this, so I had to quickly get this ready before the next step. The onions have browned nicely, so now I'm going to add the ginger, garlic, green chilies, and tomatoes. Okay, I've also added some salt. When you make these recipes, they never tell you how much salt to add, just says to taste. I've added 1.5 teaspoons of salt. I hope it's not too salty, we'll see. And it's also asked to cook at high heat, so I've turned the gas to medium. And I'm going to cook it until the tomatoes are nice and fully cooked. The tomatoes have cooked nicely, so now I'm going to add my dry spices. I have 1/2 teaspoon of turmeric, 1 teaspoon of coriander powder, 1 teaspoon of red chili powder, and that's it for the dry spices, other than the biryani masala that we're going to add that we made before. And I used his recipe, Chef Sanjyot Keer's recipe to make the biryani masala. I'll link that video below. That was a process. So you need to have that ready before you make this. I try to make everything at the same time, and it was kind of frustrating because I was doing double things. I did not realize that I needed the biryani masala, like that was not pre-made. So I had to make my own. In his recipe for this pulao, he uses his own homemade biryani masala, so I had to make that. So that took a little bit of time. So that is needed, and I'm going to put that in the next step. I added a splash of hot water just to get the spices all mixed in with the onions and tomatoes. I'm going to let this cook for a minute. Meanwhile, I'm going to get ready the next step, which is to mix yogurt with the biryani masala. So I have 3/4 cup of yogurt, and I've added 1 tablespoon of the biryani masala that I just made. Please see my link below to see how I made this masala following Chef Sanjyot Keer's recipe. I'm going to whisk this smooth and add it to my onion tomato mixture. The yogurt and biryani masala mixture, I have whisked it smooth, and now I'm going to add to my onion and tomato mixture. And the heat is low. Okay, I've added the yogurt mixture to the tomatoes and onions. I'm gonna cook for a minute and then add all our whole vegetables, the potato, carrots, green beans, and peas. Okay, I have cooked this mixture for about a minute, and now I'm going to add my fresh vegetables. The one step I'm doing a little different is I'm not adding the frozen peas yet. Because I'm using frozen instead of fresh peas, I'm not going to add it with the rest of the vegetables. When the potatoes are almost cooked, at that point I'll add the peas and the rice. So now the recipe calls for me to cook this mixture until the potatoes are about 75% cooked, and then add the rice, and I'll add the peas at that time, and then water, and then cook the pulao. I also have to add fresh coriander and mint at this step, which I'm kind of surprised because usually you add that at the end, but this recipe calls it to add at this point. So I'm going to go chop my fresh coriander and mint, and then add it to this step right here. Okay, the recipe called for a handful of coriander and 2 tablespoons of mint, and that's what I've added to the cooking process. The potatoes are not even halfway done, so I have to still keep cooking. Okay, the vegetables are 75% cooked. I'm going to add the rice, the peas, and 4 cups of water. I had 2 cups of rice soaking, so double the water. So 4 cups of water, rice, and peas. Okay, I've coated the rice nicely with the spice and vegetable mixture. I'm going to now add the water. Okay, I'm adding 4 cups of water. And then I'm going to stir, and then it says to cover it and not touch it for 10 minutes until the rice is nicely cooked and fluffy. I gotta tell you, it smells amazing. The house smells amazing. This was a process. I hope it tastes good. It does smell really good, and all the ingredients that went in are good. The spices were good, so how can it not be? I have not made rice this way in a very, very long time. I normally make my rice in a rice cooker, so this is a first for me. Right, I'm gonna cover it now. It's tightly covered. I'm gonna cook it for 10 minutes. Okay, it's been 10 minutes like the recipe said, but I still see quite a bit of water. So it's not done yet. So I need to cook it a little bit more. So the recipe said 10 minutes. It's not done in 10 minutes. Let's see how much longer it takes. So after I added the rice, it took more like 20 minutes instead of 10 that's said in the video. I'm not sure why. I followed the recipe exactly, but it took about 20 minutes. I'm going to check everything for doneness and then plate the pulao. All right, I have plated the pulao. It smells amazing. I had a little taste. It tastes really amazing. So let me have this while it's still hot. It took a while. I'm starving. And then I'll give my final analysis. So, was making this recipe worth the effort? I would say absolutely if you have at the time and you have everything prepared ahead of time. Just like any recipe, read the recipe first before making it, because I started making it and then I realized I needed to make the biryani masala. Luckily, it was our day off and we could go get some stuff that was missing, so that worked out fine. The original recipe by Chef Sanjyot Keer says about half hour. It does not take half hour. it took like 2 hours, including the time it took to make the masalas and the cooking time itself. Instead of 10 minutes, it took me about 20 minutes. So, and then of course, all the prep took a while because I had to chop all the vegetables. And so that took a long time. So definitely read the recipe ahead of time. Um, and I would say it is completely worth making it, especially if you want to make it for a special occasion, because its taste is amazing. I think making the homemade biryani masala was definitely worth the effort, and it made a good quantity. I think I can make at least like 4 or 5 times before I run out. So it's done. So the next time it's not going to take as long as it did, um, while I was making this one. So yes, I would say it was worth the effort if you have time. If you want to do shortcuts, you could always use a frozen bag of mixed vegetables and then a packaged biryani masala. But then I don't know if it would taste as good, because what made it taste so amazing was the fresh vegetables and the homemade biryani masala. So yes, I would definitely make this again, but I just need a little bit more of time. It did not, the time advertised was half hour, and I think it took a lot longer than half hour to make everything from start to finish. Again, if you like this video, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel, and then hit that notification bell so that every time I put out a new video, you are notified.